Alright, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What's the Word? Eagle Alumni Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Abby, and today we have a very exciting episode for you. Today we are joined with Tyler, and Tyler, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Tyler Morris. I'm a cybersecurity researcher at Sandia National Laboratories, doing various work in areas like phishing, cyber forensics, and simulations, cyber testbed creation, stuff like that. I attended Embry-Riddle, graduated back in 2018 with my cyber intelligence and security degree.
That's awesome. Very nice to meet you, Tyler. And do you have a special memory that you'd like to share with us from your time at Embry-Riddle?
That's a hard question, right? There's so many. I have a lot of really great memories, lots of lifelong friends. Of course, met my wife at Embry-Riddle as well. But, maybe in the context of the conversation, right, I think, when I look back at some of the comm classes and humanities courses and things that I took at Embry-Riddle, with like Dr. Landis Groom, I have really fond memories of going to those classes. I'll have to admit that when I was looking at scheduling and you're in the middle of school and doing all this stuff, taking a humanities course or a comms course doesn't seem very appealing per se. But I have to say that the memories looking back at those classes and going through books like Never Cry Wolf and things like that, I really enjoyed.
Oh, that's awesome. It sounds like you had a very fun experience at Embry-Riddle. And now with your job, you said you do work in cybersecurity. Do you want to give us a little bit of background about that?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, I do a lot of different kind of project development pieces. So some of my focus areas are in enterprise phishing. So I help execute Sandia's enterprise phishing program. Of course, I do cyber forensic simulations. So I was actually out at Embry-Riddle recently putting on an event called Tracer Fire. So that's a lot of fun. I also do some cyber testbed creation type work, building out large test beds and doing testing and simulation stuff there. So those are just some of the projects. There's a large breadth. I think one of the great parts about working at Sandia is that we get to work on a lot of different projects in a lot of different areas in cyber R&D.
Oh, how fun. It sounds like you have a very diverse setting in which you get to work, which always is a very fun thing. And do you get to tie a lot of writing into your work?
Yeah, so there is an element of writing, I think, in all of it. When I look at the type of writing, it's kind of hard, right? Because we write proposals. I'm of course doing a lot of business type communications and business writing, right? More conversational. That would be emails, things like that, giving those progress updates. But when I get to work on maybe like a proposal or for a particular item, I get more into the persuasive type of writing, right? Being able to describe our setup and how our particular design is going to be better, right, than maybe others who are designing something. But I would say, yeah, a lot of the stuff I do is mostly business writing. I do get to do some creative writing, which is great, and that kind of falls into the Tracer Fire scenario piece. So we get to build out these fictional scenarios for our cybersecurity events, which is a lot of fun. So I actually still get to do that, but not as much as college.
Oh, right, I gotcha. And with your writing, do you do a lot of memos or is it mostly emails?
Yeah, to some level, right? So a lot of, the email conversations are more about updates and then getting information across to various stakeholders and things like that. I wouldn't say I necessarily write memos to large numbers of people. The teams that I help manage internally, mix of interns and staff members. So, we typically are more informal on that kind of communication. So we use a platform called Mattermost to communicate. So it's more of like, hey, I need quick updates, or hey, this is what's going on. They don't necessarily need a reply for these larger messages. So yeah, again, it's much more business-like, just getting to the point.
Oh, all right, I gotcha. Short, sweet, to the point, everything good like that. And now, have you noticed any big differences between writing you've done at Embry-Riddle and writing you're doing in the workplace now?
Yeah, like I said, Embry-Riddle, I felt was much more creative. I was able to have more freedom in deciding what I wanted to write on. Right. We'd read all these different books and I could kind of take my perspective from that, or maybe I could watch a particular movie or something and write about it for class. So, again, it was more creative and I had the ability to pick a desired topic more than I would at work. Right. The workplace, I'm much more focused on that technical side and that business writing. So, maybe there's a particular type of attack, right, or malware that we want to describe and write up a report on. It's going to be much more technical, not as much creative.
All right, that sounds like fun. And now my last question for you today. Do you have any advice for our current Eagles?
Yeah, I think being able to write effectively and get your point across is such an important skill, right, in the workplace. Especially now with, we're out of the pandemic, but during the pandemic, if you were especially a newer employee, and you didn't have these relationships with staff members, it's really hard, right? How do you gauge your communication? How do how could you make jokes or something like that? It might not come off quite right because you're not there in the person context. But, I think that taking these types of courses at Embry-Riddle, like the communications and humanities courses, you shouldn't look at it as a hindrance, right, or a chore. I think you should look at it as an awesome opportunity to be able to explore topics that you probably, at least from an engineering or cyber perspective, you're never going to explore again. Right? Maybe you join a book club or something like that at work or do that, but really you're not going to have this opportunity to be able to creatively write and talk about topics that are interesting or things you've never even considered before. I ended up enjoying those classes immensely. I think they provided a lot of great cultural context to myself. So, definitely try that out and enjoy those courses and have fun with it. I wish also that I had taken creative writing with Dr. Landis-Groom, but I ended up not, which, something I regret.
That is great advice, Tyler, and everyone be sure to take those classes you are kind of hesitant about because you never know, you may end up loving them. But right now, we want to give a big thank you to Tyler for being on our podcast today. That wraps up this week's episode of What's the Word? Eagle Alumni Spotlight Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and stay tuned for more.
This podcast is supported by the Department of Humanities and Communication at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona. Abigail Bradbury is our host, Matthew Haslam is our department chair, and I'm Amelia Chesley, Assistant Professor of Professional Writing. The intro and outro music is Wander by Alex. Find us on Spotify or on YouTube, and reach out if you are a Prescott campus alum. We'd love to feature you in a future episode.